I am your host, Joshua Pantellaresco. I write stuff and podcast too. Tonight, the one, the only Wesley Britton is live here for you guys to watch and see. Now, Wesley is comes with is actually a first for me, not because he's just an awesome author, because he probably is an awesome author. We'll get to know more about him in just a minute, but he's if I can say so, you're the person visually impaired, I think, person I've interviewed on the show. Um, so you're first. So welcome aboard, and I hope you have a good time. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm probably a first in a lot of ways. I've got a PhD. I play drums. I'm a retired English teacher. I write science fiction. I've written spy books. Yes, I'm blind. I have all kinds of stuff to talk about.
Okay, well, all kinds of stuff to talk about is just you've come to the right place. This is the right place to do that. So, Wes, what do you want to talk about first? I'm going to let you drive this. I drive this course tonight. So, what do you want to talk about?
Well, the first three things I would like to talk about are three projects that I'm currently working on for 2021.
Okay, we can start there. We'll totally start there. Let's just start there. I get the feeling with you, my friend. I just should let you just take the wheel, and I'll come along for the ride. So
we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Item one is I'm announcing this for the very first time. Is that on February the 22nd? My next book, the 8th book in the Beta Earth series, is going to be available. You can actually pre-order it now. It's called Behind Alien Lines. You can get it at Kindle Direct, as an ebook. Like I say, you can pre-order it now. The 22nd, it'll be out. And we'll be doing lots of publicity about it at the time. We are going to have a paperback edition, although I'm not sure when that's going to be available. I'm usually waiting for that. But for the next month or so, that's where all my efforts in terms of publicity are going to be. It's called Behind Alien Lines. It's a series of stories set on Beta Earth, and it's really spy stories, because it's been a long time since I've done anything with espionage. Because they call it sci-fi because it's on a different planet. But these are mostly spy stories that are based on actual events that happened in World War II involving French female resistance fighters. I read a series of books on that subject, and I kept cribbing scenes and episodes and things like that and turning them into a sci-fi recipe. And I created three characters, brand new characters. Nobody has met them before, who take you through all these different adventures through the Almond War. And that's the thing I'm really kind of most keenly excited about. Now, while that's in the publicity mill, my second project for the year is I went back to book 6 of the series, Return to Alpha. And I started doing all kinds of serious revision to it because it's a standalone edition. You don't have to have read the previous 5 books to get into it. It's what happens like 40 years in the future when it's a handful of aliens from 2 other Earths come to our Earth. And what happens? How do we treat them? It's on an Earth where a whole series of biological weaponized plagues have wiped out the population. Climate change has done a lot of damage as well. How are we about accepting aliens with different perspectives? And I tried to put some meaning into that book, some depth to it. So that will be something that the revised version will be coming out. I don't know when. I just got done with all the revisions and waiting until Behind Alien Lines comes out, and then we'll work on that. And at the same time, I'm revising some stories, also set on our planet 40 years in the future, starring Mary Carpenter. They're going to be mysteries. They're in the future, so yeah, that's sci-fi, but the emphasis, well, like espionage is the main emphasis in Behind Alien Lines. Mystery stories and fighting terrorists is going to be what's going on in, I don't know what the title of the book will be yet. I haven't even thought about that till this very second. I know what the 3 stories are, and maybe more we'll have to see, but that's what I was working on the last couple of days, is revising a story that's, what's it called? The Dutiful Detective and the Deadly Decoys. That's like a mystery. I don't know what does, but all of these things are in the pipeline, so that's what I'm kind of keenly most excited about this year.
Yeah, well, that's pretty badass, man. So I got a lot I kind of want to unpack here. So let's
Okay.
go let's go to a like off top, like kind of go down a little rabbit hole a little bit because
Okay.
see, I'm writing a novel this year. It's about parallel universe dragon slaying,
Okay.
and one of the inspirations for it for me actually also came from World War II, but it was from Russia, the Night Witches, which was an all-female fighter pilot group, and that just decimated the Germans. I actually think they were a nightmare. They were the most successful Russian. They were the most successful Russian army. Like honestly, honest to God, like period. In like Air Force, they had these like wooden planes, so they were very limited in maneuverability. But what they would do is they would go at night and they would terrorize the Germans. They had the least losses of any Russian troop. They decimated so many German troops, planes.
What was the name of this group?
The Night Witches.
The Night Witches.
Yeah.
Check that out. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So actually, like that's no, they're a really cool group. So I actually based 3 characters off of 3 amazing Russian women I know. A mother-daughter group, the combination I know. The daughter's a pop singer. The mom is just an amazing human being herself. And a friend of mine who's actually a model. And she because you meet them, you meet those women that like they're all tough. Like they're all super, super, super tough women. I'm like, they would have been just fine back then. I think they would have done very, very well. And but that all said, like it's very fascinating. It's very fascinating to me that France had, if not that exact group, an interesting equivalent to that with the French Resistance. So I like that's a neat parallel. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying. Oh,
Yeah.
I got no dragons in my book. We're a lot more down to earth, I guess I could say.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. I wanted to do for me. I wanted to do an inverted Knights of the Round Table, and I wanted to have someone kick their ass because it's simple, it's straightforward that way, and have fun with it. And that's what I did. That's what I created. That's what I'm working on. It's my second book I'm releasing this year. The other one I'm doing is a homage to Fahrenheit 451 called Lights Out, which I'm actually trying to illustrate as well. It's my first time trying to illustrate something. This is I figure like with this year, like especially with everything going on, this is the kind of year you come out of your comfort zone a little bit because honestly, if it doesn't work out, shrug. I mean, we're kind of in a weird apocalypse anyway. So I mean, really, if it doesn't work out, who noticed, right?
One thing I thought about, I've been saying this on other shows, is that for those of us who write futuristic fiction, COVID-19 has changed everything. You can no longer really write about the future without some kind of passing reference to what 2020 has been all about. Too much of our planet has changed. It hasn't really changed like this since World War II. So, like, I have weaponized plagues that really rip Earth to pieces, and they look back on the COVID disease as kind of the gentle plague because it's not quite as devastating as what's coming. So it's kind of weird because that's the take I decided to give it. I'll look back on this year as kind of the calm before the real storm.
I'm not sure what's going to happen as a result of this. To be honest with you, I think it's really going to. So, like, COVID aside, I'm not going to talk about like COVID. The politics of it is spoken about to death. But I mean, so I think science fiction, like in general, is there are many takes on science fiction. I remember like watching old science fiction shows in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and they're old for me. I'm sorry. Right. I'm sorry.
Comic age, that was the whole thing then.
Right. So they would always talk about these dark, especially some like these. I want to say Outer Limits, but I'm not sure if that was the right show for the time, like the Twilight Zones and some. They always would imagine these like apocalyptic futures or horror.
Yeah, they always had a lot of those. Yeah.
Yeah. They always that was like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. Huh?
The 80s was kind of over the top action. I mean, you had Terminator, which was great, but probably Terminator and Aliens were probably the best two contributions to science fiction in the 80s. And then what I grew up with in the 90s, you had a bunch of great sci-fi shows. You had Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, Star Trek The Next Generation. Stargate was fun, if not the caliber of those three shows. But you had a really good palette of great ideas about the future. And science fiction kind of just disappeared for a bit or became more there was a point where science fiction kind of went away from the moral. I love good science fiction when science fiction deals with either fun military science fiction is a lot of fun, but my favorite step was always when you had a situation happen and you created a solution that was very imperfect, or two really good solutions, two really bad solutions, two really somewhere in the middle solutions, and people would make decisions, and there wasn't necessarily a moral right or wrong. But what those science fiction stories did explore the human condition in these circumstances. I think what this has changed is we've had a firsthand science fiction-esque catastrophe, and we have watched things all over the spectrum. We've seen people deny it, think it's a joke. We've seen people become almost hypochondriacs, just because of just how terrifying this is. We've seen all kinds of things in the middle, right? There's guys like me who have said, let's try some new things in this time, because why not? There are some people who froze solidly still. There are other people that, and so we literally had a science fiction moment.
Uh-huh.
And so what I think the biggest thing in science fiction in particular, it's not really so much the plague, because it's not the first time the plagues have been part of science fiction. The really, really, really old pulps did reference stuff like the Spanish flu way back in the day when they were old enough, like they had been around when that was going on, or just after that happened. But what I think this was a very stark reminder for a lot of us was, there is no one right answer when human beings face disaster. There is just a wave of different opinions and consequences as a result. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I also think because of this pandemic, all kinds of questions have popped up that science fiction writers would never have even thought of. Mm-hmm. Like when things were first starting, who would have guessed that toilet paper was going to become such a MacGuffin in all of the stuff we had going on last spring? Who would have guessed that mask wearing would become political? Who would have guessed that the breakdown of social grouping we have to deal with, and how long it was going to sustain? And right now we got vaccines, but we can't get them to anybody. I've kind of given up looking for a vaccine right now. There just aren't any in my state, Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
I imagined.
I'm of many minds is what I've seen has happened. Although the toilet paper one oddly didn't surprise me in a very interesting way. I've been really poor. And honestly, there are two things that rich and poor, if you break it down to two things you have and two things you don't, it's really this. It's toilet paper and hot water. I'm not kidding. It's that simple. When you break it all down, if you have those things, you are rich. If you don't, you don't. You'd be like there were even before, like even if you look in like countries where there are people that made living selling toilet paper in poorer countries because it's a luxury. It really, really is. It's a valuable luxury. So in one very real sense, that to me it wasn't a complete surprise. It was a little mental when it was going on, when people were in a frenzy for it. I never fully understood that part. I never fully understood completely, but because I remember having to find toilet paper in Vancouver. Vancouver's a big city, so I had to look. I had to actually look for this stuff. I was like, unbelievable, because I was down in like my last roll. I was like, oh, I gotta get more toilet paper in this. Where the hell am I gonna find toilet paper? It occurred to me, like, the cool thing about Vancouver is there's a lot of these small shops. So I figured one of them would have it, and I was right about that. But it was so weird. It was so weird that it did take a couple stores before I found it. It was like, wow, I never would have thought in a million years it would have been. I knew where to find it. I never thought it would have been such a it would have been such a thing like that so quickly. But it was kind of, looking back, it was kind of hilarious, right?
One thing you said struck me is how we define rich and poor. I can remember back in the 70s, there was an interview with Tony Randall in Playboy, and he talked about a trip he made to India where you want to be rich, own a refrigerator.
Yeah.
That was the distinguished. That's what made you, rich, was you owned one of those. And the beggars down the street would rip into people's mouths while they were chewing so they could take out the bread. Now, that is a statement of poverty to me.
But that's, like, honestly, people don't. I was living in Arizona, and I realized how much I missed. Canada is very fortunate when it comes to especially hot water. Ironically enough, there's our pipes are bigger. There's less of us here too, so it's more of a luxury. It's the one thing I kind of like from a luxury standpoint. I've never forgotten. I enjoy hot water. Like, I enjoy having it, and I appreciate it because I remember there was a point in my life where I didn't have it, and it was like, wow, the things you take for granted until you don't have them. And
you should enjoy Alpha Tales 2044. It's set in British Columbia in the future.
Yeah. Have you been to British Columbia?
No, I was on the Canadian city I've been to is Toronto. A whole lot of research. Well, one of the things I can, as a science fiction writer, you can do, if you're setting it in the future, everything's got to be different anyway. You obviously got to do a lot of research about what the topography, geography, and Indian tribes did a lot of research into what the tribes were doing, because they're up there. They get away from the white guy after climate change and after all of the plagues have come through, all the viruses that have reduced human population. Everything is very different than what you'd think it would be now, obviously. But it also gave me the opportunity to take the aliens that I introduced in Return to Alpha and send them off to where they can be hidden away or they can't be found. And that's that's what it's all about in Alpha Tales 2044.
Well, that's Canada for you. I mean, we are such a big country that you can literally disappear and no one would notice. Like, it's a very States. You can do that in the States, but it's a little harder to do it in the United States, right? So, but Canada is so big, you could literally vanish off the map if you really wanted to here. There are some interesting differences between both countries. So you've done Beta Earth, 8 books. So how long have you been writing? I guess will be my big question. The big question I'm going to ask you.
Well, actually, I've been writing since the mid-'80s. The lion's share of it has been nonfiction. When I started off doing all my publications, it was while I was in grad school, and when you're getting a PhD and all that, you're supposed to publish scholarship. Well, I did a lot of it. Like for 10 years, my universe was Mark Twain. So I did a lot of publications and I'm very involved in the Mark Twain community. And then after I graduated, I wrote a lot of encyclopedia articles and book reviews and essays and things in all kinds of publications, encyclopedias and scholarly periodicals, and finally poetry. Started doing a lot of that, and golly, I can't even remember them all anymore. But I did that until I moved back to Pennsylvania because I was living in Texas during all that stuff. I decided I want to do some long form stuff. I've been doing all these short things, reviews and articles and essays and all that. And that's when I wrote the spy books. I wrote the first one was spy television because this idea came to me that I love TV spies. I'm a big fan of that from the '60s. That's what baby boomers remember. There was all these shows, The Man from Uncle, The Avengers, and The Prisoner, and Secret Agent, and Mission Impossible, but nobody had talked about the whole genre. Well, I did. I had a loft full of books on all these shows, so I could just go through and pull out what I needed, and trace the history from 1951 to well, basically 2001, because that was the last time we had three new spy shows come out at the same time: 24, The Agency, and Alias. And boy, that was a good time to do that stuff because after 9/11, there was a huge interest in espionage. So I ended up going to the International Spy Museum and did presentations down there. I started doing presentations at the Mid Atlantic Nostalgia Convention. I had a lot of fun. So the first book led to Beyond Bond, where I got into the history of spy literature mixed in with movies and TV to a smaller extent. And then that led to On Screen and Undercover, which was a history of spy movies from 1904 to, I guess that was 2006 at the time, plus a whole other stuff at my Spywise website. And then that split it off into all kinds of projects. And my late wife used to say I was getting known by many, paid by few. And that was a lot of fun. And then I got sick of spies, just, burnt out. And that's what led to the sci-fi stuff, try a whole different way of doing things. And I'm sure I'll probably get burned out on that and then just want to do something else, but I don't know what that is just yet. We'll get there when we get there. But I am trying to diversify, like the last book that I started talking off at the beginning. It's all about spy stories. And then I got the murder mysteries coming up. And then, so it's what my publicist, Karina Candace, keeps saying, you got to diversify, get into other genres. Because right now, selling sci-fi is just a misery. I made a joke at a couple of book signings that nobody's reading sci-fi anymore because everybody's busy writing it. If you go to Facebook, you'd think that's true. There's so many groups of sci-fi authors.
Sure.
Everybody on the planet is writing it, so it's tough to crack through the crowd. 50,000 books a day, and quite a few of them are sci-fi.
Well, it's yeah, I know I'm one of them. How you doing, buddy? But I
They tell me if you want to really get to an audience, you got to start writing romance. And I don't see you doing that. Yeah.
It's not necessarily just about. It's not just about necessarily writing a particular genre. If you had if you were to do if you just a quick analysis of you there, Mr. Wesley, it's simply that it sounds to me you are fascinated by how it sounds like when you started with spies. I mean, we all have a certain romance about spies, but the networks, the history of it, where it moves, and a lot of these more clandestine, quote unquote, clandestine things, they're not really that flashy, but they are fascinating to see how people interact with each other, and that's a really cool. It sounds like you got really, really, really good at that, and
it's different eras. Because back in the day, we had a kind of a split between the Jean Le Carré Cold War stories that were real gritty and down to earth and all that. And then you had all the James Bond stuff, which is what we call spy-fi, because they were battling all these evil doers and masterminds out to conquer the world with these crazy weather machines and you name it and what all, which is a whole different thing. There's all these subgenres. If you start to look at things, they're not all one thing.
Well, but this is where I'm ultimately leading to anyway. Is you recognize your niches.
Yeah.
For me, I'm a big fan of the old pulp novels, the old the modern Japanese light novel is something I really, really, really admire and kind of like try to aspire to kind of to some degree, if not completely, not mimic completely. There are things about that sensibility I really dig. And one of the things, so I mean, so for me, like I made a conscious decision when I'm writing my books. They're going to be from 30 to 60,000 words. Like they're just strictly going to be in that range. I'm illustrating
a lot, and not an awful lot of character development, I would think.
No, you can do a lot with that. You can do an awful lot with that if you actually do it. It's just so one of my favorite science fiction authors is Roger Zelazny. I loved Nine Princes in Amber. Here's the thing about Nine Princes in Amber. That it's 200 words, but it's an amazing 200 words about Prince Corwin, who had amnesia, trying to figure out who he is, discovers he's related to this royal family that's connected to the intergalactic, this like mystical kingdom named Amber. There's traveling between worlds. And this is all in the first book, and it's like it sucked you right in. And then you got family politics, rivalries, brothers against brothers. And this is all within the first couple books. So you read this and you're like, and they're tiny. They're not big books.
Like Pulp Fiction, yeah, they're like little novels. Yeah, little novels.
They're not big books, but there's so much depth and detail in there. That's the niche I kind of want to get into because I I think this is just where I kind of see it. I think we've come to a point where, again, there are people that love the big 70, 80, 100,000 word books. Right. And that's cool. And one day when I'm mature enough to write those books, I will try that. Right. But for me, I like that short, sweet burst of this is a really cool story. This is a lot of fun. My Parallel Universe Dragon Slayer might be closer to 60 and 70. I might be a little bit bigger, but not that much bigger because I want that. I want the feeling like it's. I want something that feels really, really tight. That feels really, really, really. I want that action. I want kind of some character stuff, but I want a fun story. And then when it's over, you can maybe grab the next book afterward. But I've chosen my niche very deliberately. So because I've chosen my niche very deliberately, yeah, I may not get the futuristic space opera, military, sci-fi. I'm cool with that. I don't want to touch the military space. That's me. That's not me. Here's me. I'm Nine Princes in Amber. I'm Murray Leinster. I'm I'm not gonna say I'm on Sturgeon's level, but there's another guy that was in that, and I can't remember his name, and it's driving me crazy. Andre Norton. Like I read
a lot of those books when I was a kid.
Yeah, no, those books were I think incredible. And I think in this era, that size feels about right. We live in an era of ebooks. Well,
people need to be able to read them quick and fast and move on.
Well, yeah. Well, not even just that, but also the fact is, I don't want to read everything on my computer screen. I mean, I'm just being honest. Right? I don't want to read a big thing on my computer screen. I remember the first ebook I actually read. I remember this. And this is before like there were ebooks. I remember I got the opportunity when I was in grade 6 to play with the Sherlock Holmes entire Arthur Conan Doyle collection on CD when CDs were brand new. And I loved his short stories. I remember this when I was a kid. I loved the short stories. I could read all the short stories. I couldn't read Hound of the Baskervilles. I couldn't read The Valley of Fear because I found the computer just would drive me crazy. It'd just be like, I want to return a page. I just want that conscious feeling to turn a page. So if you're doing an ebook, I kind of feel like there's like a sweet spot of speed and character. That's what I want to hit when I'm doing ebooks. And if they look like a sexy ass dime novel when they're done, fan fucking tastic. That's what I want. Now, at some point, I will grow up and mature. Maybe I'll get.
Don't rush it.
I'm not. I'm not. I'm not. I swear. I swear. I'm not. I'm taking my sweet ass time. But that's kind of how I see it. Like I look at it like when I don't necessarily need to make. You can do a lot with very little. You just have to. It's something I've been trying with this. My next book is I've learned that like every scene is a story in of itself.
Yeah, okay. I'm very oriented.
Yeah, yeah, and so every scene's a story in of itself for me. And so it's like, what's the story of the scene, and how does it tie to the bigger story you're telling? And I try to keep it as simple as possible in terms of what the story I'm trying to tell is. But the way I tell that story is within those little stories in themselves. At least that's what I'm trying to do. Maybe I'm just being a pretentious prick. I don't know. We'll find out when I actually release the next book. But
well, it sounds like you're trying to build your story based on scenes, if I'm understanding you.
Yeah,
it makes absolute sense to me.
Yeah.
For me, a lot of times it's finding the balance between how much are you going to say and how much you're going to leave out. Because I'm finding a lot of revisions, I keep cutting out stuff. That's partly because this writer's critique group I belong to, they want stuff to move along fast, so you end up trimming and cutting. And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes I worry if I'm just gutting them. But revising is an awful lot of jumping stuff.
Well, it's realizing like what you're trying to say in the story. Like one of the biggest things authors have a struggle with is pitching a book, right? Because you want to say so much about your book.
And in today's world building atmosphere, you want to really, really develop your civilization, develop history and culture. And
there's a meta story that always adds it, but that's not the story. That's not the actual story. That's the background. That's the trimming.
That's
right?
the setting. Yeah,
it's the setting, right? That's the depth you want. You want that feeling of depth in your story. What I've learned when I pitch, okay, I'm answering 3 questions. Who's the character? What do they want? Why should I care?
Okay, yeah.
Right? If I can answer all 3 of those questions, that's what I pitch. The rest of it doesn't matter. I've written about jars of dirt. I've written about killer cupcakes, like Pac-Man style killer cupcakes. I can't. None of that matters. It's fun, but none of that matters. You get a sense of my tone, but you don't get a sense of that story, right?
Yeah,
if I say, there's killer cupcakes after my main character. Why is he after the main character? You're curious, but you don't have the story yet. But what if I said, my main character is trying to figure, like, the stories about my main character trying to rescue a friend may have gotten a little too deep into trouble. Okay, that's interesting at the start. Now, what's the actual story here? In the story I have, if I give it away, I'll give it away like what if this happened? The story about a brother and a sister with a very interesting twist, right? What about 2 family members sacrificing for each other to protect each other? That's a compelling story. What are they sacrificing? What are they protecting? That's the heart and soul of any scene, any story you tell. Those character moments where people hear the beat of them. That is what keeps people coming. Now, you can have unicorns that fart rainbows. You can have killer cupcakes. You can have like dragons flying in the air randomly. You can
that gives me a question. What is this modern fascination with dragons?
Because
book after book, it used to be vampires, then it's zombies, and now it's dragons.
Because I have no idea. Listen, Wes. I'm not cool. I'm not pretending to be cool here. This is just my own thing. I find that as writers, we are fascinated by certain things for long periods of time. So for me, the two things I've been very fascinated about, it seems like my whole career, have been dragons, which in another form or tone might be fear, which definitely is something I'm fascinated with. And the other thing I've been fascinated with is in terms of concept, is the Tower of Babel. You understand those things, you might understand a lot about what I write. And that's just me being honest about, what fascinates me. So I think the dragon for me is just like the reason I use dragons, and I usually am killing dragons, not necessarily saving them, is because to me, the dragon, the monster, the giant represents fear.
Okay.
That's the thing for me. As to why other people like dragons, I don't know. Dragons can be freaking cool. I want to kill them, but that's just me because I have my own like issues with fear. Other people are just like, they're fucking look cool, and sometimes they really do look fucking cool. I don't have an answer for you.
Well, that's okay. I was just kind of curious as to all of these kind of tropes pop up, and they just kind of stick around, and they're all over the place. I just read one book where the dragons were really two-dimensional cartoons who talk to people, and I don't even know what the point of them was in that particular book. And others, they get really inventive with how they're created and what role they play in the wars. They're always, kind of like soldiers in wars between this civilization and that civilization. Okay, well, that's all right, but why so many? Aren't there are other creatures out there that we can play with?
Oh, sure. But I mean, also, we do this as authors all the time too. We borrow from what people recognize all the time.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, right. We borrow from that. Like, people get dragons. I mean, I could make a killer platypus. Seriously, I could. It's easy enough to imagine one. I mean, I right, but you're not going to react the same way to a killer platypus. Like, you laughed at the thought, right? You're not going to react that way. You're not going to react the way I envisioned. I envisioned, right? This is the scariest thing you've ever thought of. You're like, and the first reaction's like, nope, nada. How about a big ass dragon? Oh, I get that. Right? It's perspective and expectations. You're playing with expectations. Vampires, werewolves, zombies all come with certain expectations, right? Elves come with certain expectations. Dwarves come with certain expectations. Giants come with certain expectations. Platypuses, not so much.
Not so much.
Makes sense?
Yeah, it does. Because the creatures I come up with are completely unexpected. Like, I got these stalk things that rise out of the sea in some of my books. It's just one big eye on the top of a 6 foot or so scaly thing that can't be broken into. They're going to kill them. You have to shoot something into their eyes, and they got razor rows of teeth because they can strike up out of the sea and capture birds and devour them, or out to sea they can eat anything they want. Well, that's just a completely new creation, but I think that's kind of scary.
It is kind of scary. It has a bit of that, Jaws thing going with it, right? It has that going with it. But I mean, again, if you're being honest with yourself, that does kind of fulfill that expectation somewhat. Now, you can have your own twist on the expectation. I think what isn't said enough is, you can take an expectation and completely twist it. Like I said, I did it earlier with the whole platypus thing. You're doing it yourself, but you can lean into expectations, or you can lean away from expectations. And really, the art of how you do that is how you actually write your story. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, The Blind Alien started off with what happens to a man who's walking into an ordinary bank one day and suddenly disappears and discovers that he's on an alternate Earth where he doesn't understand anything, and they blinded him in the capture. How is a blind guy going to function in that environment? And that sets up the whole epic. And I hadn't thought of this before we had this conversation, but I keep running into people with all kinds of expectations about what blindness is. On one side, this is, oh, that poor, pitiful blind guy. How do you manage this? I so admire you guys for being able to get up and dress yourselves. And on the other side is, oh, yeah, you got all these super powers, All the other senses come flowing in and compensate for the loss of your eyes, and you guys can have psychic abilities and see holes through the universe. And of course, that's all crap. It's on both sides of the equation. But people have all kinds of expectations, and they kind of get disappointed if the blind person doesn't live up to those expectations.
Well, you have to acknowledge them and then kind of turn them on their head. That all said, you must have an irrational hatred of Daredevil.
No, I just
it's okay. I don't blame you. I have irrational hatreds too. I have an irrational hatred of Ken, as in Barbie doll, the Ken doll from Barbie. I have an irrational hatred of it. I totally do. It doesn't make, actually, I know it. I know why. I do know why.
I'm guessing he's emasculated.
That is the big reason why. Yes, that is kind of I acknowledge this. That is why it's irrational. I'm not saying it's totally. I know where I'm insane, and I'm good with it, and that's what makes me me. But back to you, right? So like that's why I said like it's okay. I would I would look at Daredevil in particular and want to throat punch the guy that made him, because that to me is just like, dude, it's a cool concept. I like the theory, except now everybody wants a freaking Daredevil. I'm not gonna give you a freaking Daredevil because fuck you. That's not how it works. But that's you have that unique advantage, right?
In the case of my stories, I really kind of wanted to do it the other way around. Yeah. I wanted to show Malcolm as having to learn and adapt and cope with what's around him. He's not a superhero. Yeah. All the time, he's not even really a hero. He's the central character. He's the protagonist, but he's going to screw up. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to make major errors and mistakes as he adapts to the world that's around him. And I kind of had a flip on Star Trek, too, because I love Star Trek. But one thing that always used to drive me nuts is whenever the Enterprise would get to a planet, Kirk or Picard would talk to one leader, maybe two from two different factions, for an entire planet. And I understand why. In an hour-long drama, that's about the best you can do. But in literature, I wanted my characters to deal with multiple cultures. They would run into one culture, then move over to another one, or the setting would be completely different. Same planet, but different attitudes and different cultures, and keep moving around the globe, and there'd be different expectations for them wherever they would go. And then that gives you a lot more depth if you don't restrict yourself to the whole planet has this one aspect of it, or these two aspects that define everything. I wanted it to be richer, more complex than that. And I hope I succeeded. I hope.
Well, I mean, that's something you're familiar with. Number one. Number two, there are a few sci-fi shows that do that, but Star Trek with like Next Generation and Voyager and any of the Starship shows don't really do that. Again, you're telling a story. You have an hour. You have a budget. Yeah. They played with it a little bit in Next Generation, but only a little bit, and it's not to any depth. Like if you want to see that, Babylon 5, Deep Space Nine,
yeah,
both of them played with that a little bit. But yeah, like realistically, you go to a place where everybody's unique. Now there are you can flip that whole trope on its head in a bunch of different ways too. But I think with where you're going, like we were talking about this earlier about the fact that your character is blind going into an alternate universe. You have a unique perspective on that very few people would ever have, because you live it and do it all the time. So I mean, the only thing I would tell you is when you put a story like that together, it's always good. Like a really smart way of looking at your stories is, okay, what's the punchline people expect? And how can I twist it? Like for me, how can I twist it in ways that make you laugh? Right, right. You know, and because I'm playing into your expectations, I'm just doing it in a way that's that's tickling your funny bone. Like I said, the irrational hatred of Daredevil, the killer platypus, the like all that stuff, right? I'm playing with your expectations. It's what I'm doing. But
I'm trying to think of this author you should know. And I just read one of his books. He does all these zombie turkey books. And his last one, he had Flying Killers Zombie Pickles. And that seems to be about the most unique creation I can think of.
Zombie pickles. Okay. Well,
flying zombie pickles.
Flying zombie pickles. That's something I have to acknowledge. Like I never would have thought of zombie pickles in a million years.
Yeah.
Well, he's doing the same thing I just did. He just said, you know what, you're expecting this crazy thing. No. We're going to give you this. We're going to
think of his name. I read 6 of his books and I reviewed every one of them. And for some reason, I'm just having a serious brain fart. I can't remember his name. I'm going to be so embarrassed.
It happens, man. Don't worry. Like if it comes back to you, I mean, let's just keep rolling. If it comes back to you. So.
Well, I wouldn't mind tossing him a free plug, and I just can't.
It'll come. Don't. This is how this works. See, when you want it to be there, it's like, nope, not at zero. Not gonna show up. Not gonna be there. I'm not gonna care. But hold on a second here. I'm trying to. Karina's laughing at us both because I said the Daredevil thing, the irrational hatred of Daredevil. She laughed at that. So hey, Karina, nice to see you.
Karina, who I'm thinking of, she knows.
Yeah, if Karina can answer that question, that'd be cool. But if I find the comment, I'll find the comment. But Karina Cantus has been on my show, and she is an awesome author in her own right. So I mean, she's watching this while we're going here. But we were talking a little earlier, like you went from spies to science fiction. So, so when you were a kid, some of the books I mentioned, you said earlier that you read. So did you like science fiction? Did you like science fiction very much back in the day?
I read everything. I was ridiculous. I literally could read a book a day. I can remember the day it was in 5th grade. I was standing by the library pit where they had all the novels and the fiction. And I must have looked seriously forlorn because a teacher came by. It wasn't one of my teachers. Said, "What's wrong, Wesley?" And I said, "Well," I looked down the pit and said, "I read them all." And she looked at me like I was nuts. That's not possible. Well, yeah, I read them all, except for the romance girls for books. I've read every blessed book down there. And she looked at me, and then she sat back, and then she says, "Follow me." And then she walked me back and introduced me to nonfiction. And that was one of the greatest gifts I ever got. I fell in love with autobiographies and biographies and histories in a big way. And that added up, whole different worlds. Well, I liked a lot of stuff. I liked, comic books, and I like TV shows. And I like a lot of stuff. I'm really big into things. Rock and roll. In fact, when I had the online radio show I co-hosted, I used to interview celebrities from the baby boomer generation who were in bands like Lovin' Spoonful and Jefferson Airplane, stuff like that. All of that's in my kettle of interest. Yeah, you name it, I probably got some interest in it, unless it's country music. Or I can't handle them, but I got a lot of stuff.
Well, I have a slightly softer spot for country music than I did when I was younger. There's still a lot of it I can't listen to. I'm being very honest about that. But there is some of it that I actually can look at with a little bit more. Some of them tell very good stories. Like I look at someone like Reba McEntire, who actually is a very good singer, very good.
Yeah, she is actually.
Yeah. Johnny
Usually the female singers I like better.
Pardon?
It's usually the female singers I like better in country. They don't have that hokey twang to them.
Johnny Cash is like like I think most people like Johnny Cash, although I would argue that Johnny Cash was the original rapper. That's actually my.
He was in that Sun Records multi-million quartet. What was it? Him, Carl Perkins, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis, Roy Orbison. They were all there, all founding fathers. And yeah, Johnny belongs there.
Yeah. So I mean, so it's totally was the. You look at him, you look at the impact he's had on music. I like sometimes the humorous guys like Elvis. Not oh man, what's his name? Tom Paisley, I think it is. I could be wrong. I feel really, 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 really terrible right now. But some of the. But again, if you look at pretty much every kind of storytelling we have, whether it's music, whether it's books, whether it's, I think this is actually I think a cool thing, and we're talking about here. We're all, as authors, we're always playing with expectations, right? Mm-hmm. That's has come before, and what we're doing is we're adding our own twist to ideas that have existed long before, and some of them are hilarious. Some of them can be sad, make you happy. Some can make you angry. Some can make you sad. But we all bring our own take on stuff, and I think that's what makes. That's why I don't worry the fact that there are 50,000 people writing science fiction. That's cool. The killer cupcake platypus monster in my book will not be duplicated by any of you because it's me. It's all mine. And now that this idea is out there in the open, it doesn't matter. Mine is still going to be scarier or sillier or something.
One of we haven't mentioned, and we really should, because he is absolutely the most magnificent is Herbert.
So Karina, so let's see if this name. So Andy Zach. Is it
yes.
Zach? Okay, yes, okay. Andy Zach, Zombie Turkeys, My Undead Mother-in-Law, and Paranormal Frontiers. Like those sound like My Undead Mother-in-Law sounds like a horror story already.
Oh, they are funny as hell. I really enjoy these stories.
Yeah.
Let's get out there.
Yeah, should I get them on the show?
I'll be pirates.
Yeah. But I mean that's who I think that's who it was, and that's who Karina said. So Karina, thank you. But no, that's the thing, right? We all like gravitate toward, like I said, we play with them in different ways. We've chosen, like Andy and I have chosen humor. You've chosen.
I kind of think it was cultural anthropology half the time, because I'm examining how these characters function in the context of the culture that they're in, which keeps shifting and changing, and you're looking at their backgrounds and what shapes them as characters. Because I'm all about characters. I don't have a lot of high-tech sci-fi stuff. There's no lot of exotic weaponry. There's definitely no spaceships. It's definitely not a technology-oriented series. It's definitely, here's the people, and here's what they have to deal with, and here's how they function, and here's how they live in cultures that we probably wouldn't accept too much. Well, for example, on the Beta Earth, one characteristic is that they have a plague that kills 3 out of 4 male babies their first year. And they want to find a cure to this plague, and that leads to polygamy. So our blind guy ends up going through has a lot of wives as the story progresses, and each one of them brings a culture with them. And that's kind of how we meet the planet, is through the different women who become part of the Renbren tribe as it grows and expands. And as time goes by, we get some mutants in there, and some more typical sci-fi kinds of things. But the real point is, how are you going to engage with this culture? And that Malcolm never would have, understood or experienced, or he has a hard time adapting to Beta Earth ways. Let's put it that way.
apparently, from what Karina says, he's got like 15 wives. That
I think it's the final time.
so that's a lot of stamina, my friend. That's a lot of stamina.
Well, not all of them are that kind of wives. There are those that are there in name only.
Maybe that's
well, yeah.
That's commitment, my friend. That's commitment. I don't look. I look at it like this. Like there are some women I'm not sure I'm man enough for just one of them, let alone 5 or 6 or like hey, if you can do that, God bless you. God bless you. I don't know how you did it, but I'll give you a salute of respect, and I'll just I'll deal with the fact that that on this I just don't got what it takes. I'm good with that.
Well, I wouldn't be able to pull it off either. I'm not Malcolm. In fact, I go to great pains to put him through a lot of hell and torment so that nobody is of the illusion that this is wish fulfillment or anything like that. There's a lot about his life you don't want to duplicate. You wouldn't want it at all.
But isn't that true of everybody though? Ultimately, I mean that's I think the best thing about
Oh, I wouldn't want polygamy. I'll put it that way.
Well,
I would scare you to death.
Well, I think from a lot of us, it's just it's not a thing we can deal with. I mean, there are some like I like watching how relationships are evolving in this world today. It's interesting to see all the different ones that are out there, and God bless every one of them because I some of them I just look at and go, I have no clue how this works, but it works.
I see that every day. Yeah.
Yeah. We all see it some way or another, and it's not a knock because I sometimes hey, I'm a big enough man to acknowledge something. Sometimes I just don't get it, and good with that. You know what? As I've gotten older / wiser, we'll leave the wise to someone smarter than I am. I recognize the fact that actually I think the most important thing I learned is the coolest thing about science fiction. I think, and this is great science fiction gives you the ability to open your mind to possibilities you've never considered. I mean, books do this in general, I think, but science fiction.
Yeah, that's right. Also from Emily Dickinson. The book is a frigate that takes you, I forget the exact phrasing of it. But yeah, opens you up to possibilities. Yeah, I'll go with you 100% on that one.
Yeah, it's just like it opens your mind and you learn. You read enough books, you become empathetic. And I think the hardest thing, I'm a naturally curious person. So I think the hardest thing for me, and this was very hard for me to understand when I was younger. Now I'm a little older. I can't say I'm fully at peace with it, but I'm at a better place with it, we'll say. There are things I'm just never going to understand.
Well, I could think of current political situation that.
Oh, actually, I get the political situation. There's a simple. There's the simple, then there's the really convoluted part of it. But the simple thing is, ultimately, the problem is there's no integrity on any side.
Oh God.
Well, no, but that's it. Like it's like that's what it comes down to. Like you don't have when you have such a divide in anywhere, any place, any time. The common denominator usually is there's a misperception of what is going on. There's a deception of some kind because I always tend to look at it like this: if we're divided, someone's benefiting. I'm maybe completely cynical in this regard.
I'm pretty cynical. I wish I could go with this. There's more that unites us than divides us, but honestly, I can't, and I don't see it.
Actually, the truth of the matter is, I actually agree with that, but it's easier to. Here's the thing: intelligence, by its very nature, discerns difference. That's the nature of intelligence. That is the big measuring stick. That intelligence and ego. How am I different from you? Not good, right?
Yeah, okay.
Wisdom is recognizing how little that actually matters. That's the problem.
How you value those differences. With the religious distinctions, my God's bigger than your God. My God's better than your God.
But again,
All that stuff.
discerns difference. That's it. It's a survival mechanism, and ultimately a good one. However, it does come with problems.
When the value judgments come in.
So that's it. Intelligence discerns difference. Wisdom learns to understand them. That's it. I think we have more in common than they're different. In fact, I speak to this podcast. I've done 510 episodes. I don't care what side of the political structure. I've interviewed pretty much everyone on every spectrum you can possibly imagine. And I'm telling you,
yeah, 500, yeah.
yeah. And I'm telling you, man, there really isn't that much of a difference. There really isn't. The differences are very small. Now an inch can be a mile depending on what the inches are. But truth of the matter is, we're not that different. Ever. We all hate. We all are afraid. We all discriminate. We all judge.
That's all true, yeah.
Things all the time. Sometimes we're doing it because, frankly, we're trying to survive. Sometimes we're doing it because we're assholes. Sometimes we're doing it not realizing it.
That's true. Right.
Sometimes. The trick is understanding that the essential connection's there. Our perception of how that connection works is what makes us all different. That's the cool thing. Sometimes that's the cruel thing. That's unfortunately the way it is. I got you thinking, I think.
Yeah, you did. It got my mind tumbling all kinds of things, making me think of different scenes in my stories, because it's amazing how little subtleties can get magnified if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like there's one scene in this one story I'm working on where a Muslim bookstore owner walks up to a character and says, "Here's my Quran. It corrects your Bible." Now, for him, that's an empathetic gesture of something, or the woman who receives it takes it as an insult because you've offended her faith. It goes much deeper than that. So that gesture intended to be, a gracious thing is taken as, "You bastard, you can't do that to my faith." I don't know why I thought of that particular scene, but it just kind of jumped out at me while we were talking. Maybe because I wrote about it today. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I talked myself into a corner. I don't know where to go next.
So, speaking, I have friends who are Muslim. I have friends who are. I do believe in God. I don't usually talk. I mean, generally speaking, I do tend to follow the Christian bent. I have my own interpretation of some things because I'm a big enough man to acknowledge the fact that I don't know shit. That took a long time to be humbled that way, but it's true. I have been humbled that way. I don't know very much. I just know that I'm here, and while I'm here, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, and the rest of it is a little too big for me to grasp and understand, and I'm good with that. The last thing in this world I want to be is God. That's why I write books. That's the closest thing I want to get to it, and I really, 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 even then sometimes I'm like, what the hell am I doing? But that's what I've learned. And what I've also learned is, when I've dealt with people that had different religious beliefs, the tendency to correct isn't, and then just a thought for your scene. It's not unless you're in a very specific kind of place. That's generally not what I've observed here. They would talk to you. They would talk to you about it. But they wouldn't necessarily, because again, especially because of all the prejudice that has happened over here. It's not something. I'm not sure it's something that would be that that open, if that makes sense. So I don't know. It's a thought. It's a thought to consider. I don't know. It's your boat. I'm a peon. Don't worry about me. But
I was just thinking, have you interviewed any Wiccans? Because I would think, because I can remember my time while I ran with a bunch of Wiccans, how they could look back on religious persecution like no other group. The burning times, the Holocaust, the prejudice to this day. There's nobody talks about Wiccans much anymore. They were kind of big there for.
they're not. Oh, well, they do and they don't. I don't. Okay, so I'm going to say this up front, ladies and gentlemen. I might come across like completely ignorant ass in the next statement I make. And I mean ignorant in the fact that I really don't necessarily know any better, and I'm going to acknowledge that up front. If I'm wrong and you want to correct me, please do, because I may not know this. Acknowledge this. So I'm throwing this out there because I've in my travels, although they may not necessarily be called Wiccan, or I would tend to go towards the more pagan oriented beliefs are a lot more prevalent now. It's almost like we've gone back to that in one sense, because my dad and my mom are, when I was growing up, was in the charismatic movement a lot for Christianity, and that went through its heyday, and it kind of and it's the United States is still very much, there's still a very strong Christian base there, but
yes.
But there's also a lot of other things as well, and very quietly, the United States has hidden its paganism well, sometimes in plain sight. But I mean, as far as persecution goes, absolutely. There's long history, but there's a lot of different religions in the United States have been persecuted. Muslim, Jewish. I mean, you name it. I mean, I mean, the one group that really hasn't been persecuted, is Christianity. Although you could,
white Protestant Christianity.
Yeah,
Catholics sure got their hits back in the the early parts of the country. We had 2 Catholic presidents. That says something.
Well, I'm just saying, like it is what it is. Like I've learned very much that persecution is a thing, but also like when you go somewhere and you're the outsider.
Tell me about
it. Right, you don't tend to correct other people for how they do things, because it's not polite. Number one. Number two, you're not. I lived in a Mormon community. My beliefs are not exactly a Mormon beliefs. Now, I learned an awful lot more about, during that time, I learned an awful lot about tolerance. I also learned an awful lot too, that perception, that expectation that we're going. I feel this is really interesting that we're going. Every time we're talking, or at least for me, it comes back to expectations. What I've had to learn in my life, every place I've been, everything I've seen, is I've had to let go of expectations of what I'm seeing around me, right? The connotation, and some of those things took a very long time. I wasn't younger me, like younger, early 20s me, was sure of everything, judged quickly, was very, very one-dimensional and linear in a lot of things. And there are some things I still hold from that, but older me has recognized that I really don't know shit. Like I really, really don't know shit. And I've learned too that sometimes the very things I value come from the people that I'm supposed to not have, that aren't supposed to have any of it. I have learned that sometimes some of the most honest and decent and caring people I've ever met have had nothing in common with my belief system at all.
Yeah.
And the people and the people with my belief system have been the cruelest sons of bitches I've ever seen on the planet. Right? So so Christianity can be broken down to 3 commandments. So basically it's believe in God, honor thy neighbor, love thy brother. I struggle with 3 sometimes. Honor thy neighbor, I get that one. Believe in God, I totally get that one. Love thy brother.
Well, you're kind of ignoring John 3:16 there. I think for a lot of Christians I've known, that's the big one.
No, it's actually this is what I'm talking about. Is what I'm talking about. I'm not ignoring it. This is when Christ was asked about the 10 Commandments. He broke it down to those 3 exact things I just said. And not only that, I mean, seriously, if you look at the Bible strictly from those 3 things, you get those 3 things from the Bible. Everything in there is supposed to reflect those 3 things, one way or the other. Believe in God, honor thy neighbor, love thy brother. That's it. It's really, really like it's simplified, but that's that's every commandment in the Bible. It's every verse, every proverb. Believe in God, honor thy neighbor, love thy brother. Hard ones for me is love thy brother because right because I have a hard time with hypocrisy in my own because I have my fair share of it too. Right. I have my fair share of it too. It's hard. It's hard to look at somebody that you're supposed to see the same things you see and have that expectation just ripped out from under you. That's so hard. And I have personally found that that's the hardest one to accept. I expect someone else from the outside to have a different perspective than me. How can I? They've walked completely different shoes than I have. Someone that's walked in my shoes even a little bit, though, how could you see it so differently? And that's like just my own. That's a harder one for me to deal with than any of the other ones, right? That's just sorry, Karina.
We do it, Karina.
Yeah, sorry, but that's always been a personal struggle with me. So like talking about what you're talking about. What?
Why did you think she'd be offended by that?
No, she said religious yawn. She said religious yawn. So I mean, I can get it. It's
enough.
I'm sorry. I have beliefs. It does come up once in a while. But
I'll shift gears for Karina.
Okay, that's
about expectations earlier. One thought flashed to my mind. That's probably my legacy, because as a blind person, for 33 years, I was a teacher in the classroom, and I suspect for 99% of those students, I was the only disabled authority figure they ever had. I doubt if any of them. I know a lot of them came in with weird expectations because they would write about it. They'd say, come in, and I said, "Oh, I see this blind guy coming in. How the hell is he going to pass this class? Oh my God, he's the teacher." Blowing away expectations. I think that's what I've done with not just my writing, but my life, my career. Yeah, I kind of like that idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's your strength. Like, I think the best piece of advice I've ever gotten when it comes to writing is this: write the story only you can tell. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest struggle writers face is the pursuit of arts in general force you to confront yourself somewhere in this journey. If you get to the point where you want to get to, like, I think that line between good and great is really, I think the biggest difference is about the honesty of your heart, how honest you are with what you see on the inside, and the clearer understanding you have of yourself, I think the better stories you can tell. More experiences help with that. Going through things definitely helps with that. But I find like that's the real journey we go through as creatives. It's discovering who we are and what we have to say in the life. and the clearer it gets, the better you can tell that story. And I think that's the eternal struggle, because you also always you change and you grow. And when you get to, and we get, and I realize you're still a dashing young man there, Mr. Wesley, but even
I keep feeling more and more. I'm 67, and I gotta recognize that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So this you probably understand too, is when you confront your own flaws, like your own character flaws. Some of them,
if you believe in the damn things,
yeah. Some of them you can still change, but some of them you cannot. And I think as you get older, you come to a point where you kind of accept those things easier as you get older. I haven't gotten there. I'm still I'm a middle-aged and crazy still. Like I said,
you've got lots of time to enjoy being middle-aged crazy.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm middle-aged and crazy. I totally acknowledge that. But when I get to your end, I know there's going to be things about me. It's like I can't change that. I've done this journey, but at that point, I think, like, I'm hoping I can tell better stories then than I can even do now. How do you?
I keep hoping I get better. That's why I'm doing all this revising. Is I can tell the stories better now than when I first put them out there. That's important to me. I will say one thing I've learned that as I get older, I'm always hearing that expression. I go back, I wouldn't change anything. Well, I would. I think a ton of things I'd change if I could.
Karina says you're 67 with the heart of a 20-year-old. I can believe that. I totally can.
Oh, that's nice. Thank you, Karina.
Yeah. But, well, this has not been what I expected, but in the best possible way. How about you?
I don't know. What do you expect after 500?
I had no expectations. Sometimes
my wife, one of my favorite phrases I said all the time was, "I have no preconceived notions." As I say that almost situation. I don't know. I have no preconceived notions.
When we spoke via email, we do create kind of an impression. We created an impression, so I wasn't sure, like there was like I wasn't sure if we were going to go down the academic path. I wasn't sure we were going to go down like the science, like talking book path. We talked a little bit about your books, probably not as much as you hoped in one way, but I think right. But on the other hand, you've definitely been entertained for sure. So
you give me all kinds of things to think about. That's always good.
Yeah.
I need a new grist for the mill.
Go ahead. That's good. That if I did that, I did my job. I did something right. Anyway, one way or the other. So we're gonna go back to
Karina entertained.
Oh, I entertain really easy. I have fun. I love to do this. So I mean, this for me is always a blast. So how do we do this? Let's go back to your science fiction series a little bit, for just a little bit. Then we'll wrap the interview up, and then you get to plug your stuff like crazy again. And then at some point in the future, you come back here, and then you can be your old school radio persona and see if you can maybe get an interview out of me. That'd be kind of fun, I think.
After you give me a book to read.
Okay. I solemnly swear I will give you a book to read, but we'll talk.
I want to read the book before I ask any questions, because I want to tap into that.
But all right, so you've done 8 books in this series.
Yeah.
So the premise has been the far future. So
no. Some of the books, yes. There's actually 3 different settings. The first 4 are basically our timeline on Beta Earth, alternate history. And then 20 years in the future, there's the third Earth where some of the characters go over to a different Earth and they do that. And then 40 years in the future, is when we come to this planet, and that's the last couple books, Return to Alpha and Alpha Tales 2044, are set way in the future. So there's kind of three timelines. Not timelines, but time zones or eras.
Mm-hmm. So you're doing like parallel like Earths.
Yes.
So I guess because we mentioned like biographies and we mentioned nonfiction, you gotta love you gotta love history then.
Oh, I love history. Yes.
So is the fact that you go into the future with all these different Earths, is there like a premise to like a choice? Because it seems like when you go to different Earths, like when Earths change, there's usually like some point of the decision made that because decisions change everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
So is that the premise? Like you're exploring a decision and like
these explorers have no choice in the matter whatsoever. When Malcolm is captured on our planet and drugged to Beta Earth, he doesn't know what happened. He doesn't know what's going on. It takes him a long time. At first, he thinks he's on a spaceship because he wouldn't have even thought of an alternate Earth or an alternate universe. So it takes him a while to realize where the heck he is. And then from that point forward, there's a whole different trajectory. People say when they think that I'm based on me. Well, I think for the first two chapters of the book, the first book, The Blind Alien, yeah, that's pretty much me. That's my experiences. That's how I would deal with things. And then there's a point where, well, enough to talk about actors, where they have this point where they step into a character or become that character. I think at the end of chapter 2 of The Blind Alien, Malcolm steps into himself, and from that point forward, he's not me. He's this completely fictional character. What happens to him, I didn't know when I wrote it. It was just the characters told their own stories. They created themselves, I keep saying.
Yep.
And then when
that's it.
Wasn't by choice. It was, well, I keep the deities, the different gods, the different universes kind of work together. It's kind of a, oh, I don't know what you call it, celestial cabal or something. I don't know. I keep that pretty amorphous. But no, they're commanded. You've got to go to the third Earth. You've got this mission. You've got to explain to these people about the alternate universe. You've got to share this Earth with that Earth and kind of cross pollinate the different planets with different views and attitudes and share what humanity is like in this other universe. And then the last Earth, our Earth, when they come back around, is kind of the same thing. We don't adapt to that very well. We don't like hearing what other gods and universes have to say. We're too frightened of that. And that's one storyline. And I forgot where I was going. Where did we start with this?
Well, I just thought your fascination with history because because when you do parallel Earths, I always feel like there's a theme of choice because there's a point where things divert, and that's always to me the interesting crux of parallel worlds. Right? I love exploring that. Like again, I'm writing a parallel worlds book, and the cool thing is, so the way I'm doing it is the way I did it. I'm taking my favorite like movies and like scenes in history, and I'm basically building all these parallel Earths off these different points in history. I have a Magnificent Seven Earth. I have like a World War I Earth. I have a World War IV Earth. I have like an Earth where there's no people on it outside of like a handful. I have people. I have like an overabundance of people on one, and it's just I'm just playing with all the ideas of different choices and concepts, and just to fleshing out the world and the character that fits that world too, because her journey is a big part of all these different Earths as well. Her choices and who she wants to become. So that to me, that's how I approach parallel Earths. But for you, it's like divine gods playing tug of war with each other.
They manipulate the roads that the main characters have to follow. And that works for the better and it works for the worse. At the end of book 4, there's a group of 6 of them that have to go to the third Earth. And in the process, they're transformed. For Malcolm, it works. He gets his sight back. For the others, they get squeezed together into two bodies into one, or they're transformed into what's called NAMS on the third Earth, where they have two bodies that could share all the knowledge, and they look very different from humans on the other two Earths. But yeah, you can play all kinds of tricks. The one, like I said, the polygamy on the third Earth, it's overpopulation that they've got to deal with, and they live in huge cones because they just don't have a lot of space. So that's a big part of that planet. World building can get to be very, especially if you've done tours, you've got to find different ways to do things and have different kinds of cultural settings for people to manipulate in and work with, and that's a lot of fun. I think I really enjoy doing all that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Well, I think, my friend, we have an interview here. What do you think?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Even if we annoyed Karina.
It's okay. Karina will forgive us. Karina is and generous, and I cracked her up way too much when she was on my show the first time too, and I was on her show. So I think it's good.
Yeah.
But
yeah, she has lots of good things to say about you.
Well, that's good. I'm happy. No, she's cool. And Karina, thanks for watching along with everyone else. So, my friend, I think this is the time you get to plug your stuff. Now, I put your link for Behind Alien Minds on my Twitch. People can order it there. If you want to talk about the book specifically, you can. You can talk about how people can find you. That also would be great. And then we'll all wrap up.
Well, okay, there's lots of places on the web to find out about me and my books. Place number one would be drwesleybritton.com. That's my website. And there's got links to everything. There's background about the books and my history and news about what's going to be happening and information about each of the books. Karina set up a YouTube channel where there's readings from the books, and there are trailers there. All kinds of special things you can see if you go there. We've got I read a lot of book reviews. I crank out book reviews for bookpleasures.com. So we repost all that at Goodreads, and she created a book review page at Facebook. Although she's switching over to MeWe, which I still don't know scrap about. You'd have to ask her. But at Facebook, we do have a Beta Earth Chronicles Facebook page. What else? Goodreads. Got a Goodreads personal page. Not personal, but a book page, and a page for each of the books. Amazon got an author page and pages for each of the books, so you can see what's going on in each of them. What else we got there? I think those are the main things. Okay. If I got something, that sounds like me. I'm 67. I'm starting to have these little gaps. Me and my girlfriend trade off forgetting stuff.
She keep you in mind. She's like, remember this now. Yeah.
Well, she can't do that because as soon as she says that, then she'll have forgotten her glasses or cell phone or something or other. That's all there is to it. That's one of the things that I noticed.
It's okay, man. I mean, hey, listen. Yeah, 67 years old. You have the right to forget shit. You just have the right to forget shit. You have the right to do whatever the hell you want to do at that age. I honestly think at that point you're kind of bulletproof. Not because you can't die, but basically because you might as well just do what you want. You might as well be that kid because.
You know what keeps me young and a kid and that 20-year-old soul that Karina was mentioning?
Yes.
What's that?
Yeah.
I try to spend an hour a day if I can over there banging along with the old hits. Just plug in my Alexa and my headphones and just pull out the drumsticks and go just like I was in high school. It feels just like I was in high school. And it's good. Drumming is the most outstanding exercise there is. It's meditative. Yeah. It takes you out of your head. It takes you out of your body. It's gets you physical. It gets your lungs going. It's about a perfect hour, and you spend an hour with music. What can be better than that? Especially rock and roll. I'm the rock and roll kid.
Rocket. So I'm going to do it like this as a wrap up. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Wesley Britton, the rock and roll kid, was live here on Just Joshing tonight. Check out his book, which is Behind Alien Lines, which is coming out. It's going to be $1.99. It'll be released soon. The link is in my Twitch. It will be in when you look at the descriptions below on my episodes, whether on my YouTube or on the podcast. You can get the book that way.
On Amazon or check my website. That's the place to go. Is my website.
So yeah. So check out his website. As you can see, just check out his website for all the pertinent info. Beyond that, if you guys want to support this podcast, click the subscribe button on my YouTube channel, Joshua Pantellaresco. Also, click the follow button on my Twitch account, Just Joshing Podcast. I have a Patreon as well under Just Joshing Podcast if you want to donate and that for stuff there. Beyond that, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. As you see, peace out. Me and him both going to sign this for you. And just remember, if nothing else you got from this episode, it was two things. Wesley has an irrational hatred of Daredevil, which is I might write that in the description just to say it, right? Number one. Number two. But number two.
I envy Daredevil. He got to see Jennifer Garner.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I can respect. That is definitely something I'd be envious of. I mean, seeing a pretty woman is definitely one of the great joys of life. It truly
yes, it is.
Yes, it is. But and you made me lose my train of thought because now I'm thinking about pretty women. But that's okay. That's neither here nor there. Guys, if you want to support the podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you guys tomorrow. I got 2 episodes tomorrow, and now I'm going to enjoy a long weekend off. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. I'll see you guys next time.